Hey, welcome everyone. This is our first presentation of the new year, and we're very happy that you could all join us for this presentation of Business Planning the Easier Way. We have Mark Goldberg from the SCORE in Cape Cod. We also have Jim Danhauser with us as well, plus two representatives from the East Cambridge Savings Bank, Seth Felix and Robert Nichols. And they will be able to answer any questions you have in conjunction with the bank and what they're looking for in business plans. So we have a lot of really great information for you today. As we get started, and if you're new to SCORE, we want to let you know what we do. We do training, as you are here today, in the form of webinars and some in-person workshops. Watch for that newsletter to come out, and so that you know what's coming up. We also have a really great website of all kinds of templates, not just business plans, but marketing templates and cash flow, budget, all kinds of different templates that you can download. There's stories you can read, blogs you can watch, all kinds of really great information. I strongly encourage you to check that out. The most important thing the SCORE does, however, is provide mentoring. Our mentors are volunteers, and they come to SCORE for a variety of reasons, whether it's just to give back or wanting to help the small business community, but they come to us with a variety of skill sets and experiences to share with those that are trying to decide if small business ownership is right for them, are in that planning phase, or already are an established business that needs information on certain topics or is getting ready to expand, or you name it. We have probably got a mentor that can help you and work with you. A first session is in that 45-minute range. They're going to want to learn what your goals are, what your challenges are, and help you formulate a plan to achieve those goals and overcome your challenges. Our mentors work together as a team. They will confer with each other. They will bring in other mentors to help along the way. So you're getting a fantastic team behind you that wants to help you succeed. So to get a mentor, super easy. You can use the QR code on the screen, or you can go to the score.org website. There's a blue box. You can put in your zip code and it'll match you to the chapter that's nearest you. Then you will be asked a couple questions about how SCORE can help you. And that will be used to help match you to a mentor that can work with you. Today's format is obviously webinar format. No one can hear or see our attendees today, but we do have quite a few people on today. So I would like to have you use the Q&A button on your Zoom bar to submit questions to our presenter today. You can also submit questions for our bank representatives today. And we are recording. So you will be able to find this recording on the score.org/Boston website under the local workshops there on previously recorded webinar. And we will also be sending a follow-up email with that recording link and template information as well. As we get going, I would like to go ahead and introduce our sponsor today from East Cambridge Savings Bank, Robert Nichols, and he wants to give us a little bit of background on East Cambridge Savings Bank.
Teresa, thank you. I'm actually enjoying all the different business types that everyone's sending in. So it's a nice, diverse collection of business industries. So thank you, Teresa, and thank you everyone for joining the webinar this afternoon. It's nice to be back with SCORE. It's been a while. It's been at least, I think, a month. So again, it's nice to be back. SCORE has been a great partner to work with, and we continue and are willing to provide these outstanding workshops. East Cambridge Savings Bank is a mutual savings bank. We are not a publicly traded company. We don't have investors. Mutual savings banks have been around since the early 19th century and are still quite common in New England. Our bank was founded in 1854 and has been operating with the same name and charter since then, and we have never been acquired or sold to a larger bank. Since East Cambridge Savings Bank is a mutual bank and we don't have shareholders, we tend to reinvest profits locally through nonprofit organizations, mortgages, and loans for small businesses. Thank you, and back to you, Teresa.
Okay, great. Well, I would like to go ahead and invite Mark to share his screen, and I will turn it over to Mark, and it's all yours.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I must say, this is a great way to start the year, um, and in learning and sharing and being a part of an ongoing enterprise, and that is small business. Uh, I'm very pleased to be here. This is a subject that I have worked on for a number of years, and it's interesting to see how it keeps expanding and growing itself, uh, with the whole concept of lean planning and more advanced uh, business model planning. So today what we're going to do is talk about a simple way to plan, and that is using the business model canvas. When I think about planning, I think about a presenter I listened to, many, many years ago in California, who is actually a marketing guru, Peter Johnson. And we all know that presenters have an objective, and that is that the attendees can take away at least one thing that they can do immediately after the educational workshop. Well, Peter Johnson left these three words with me, and for 30 years, it's been my mantra, and that is accuracy before momentum. And those of you who have small businesses, those of you who are thinking about a small business and are in the planning phase, need to remember that going too fast sometimes makes the journey much more difficult. So what we want to do is we want to go slow. We want to be accurate in what we're doing. We want to think through every step of the way to assure ourselves that we are on a trajectory for success. So I'm leaving you with my final thought at the beginning, and that is accuracy before momentum. Well, what we're going to do today is really think about the purpose of a business plan. And when we think about business planning, it's really a tool to communicate. It's a tool to communicate to ourselves, to our employees, if we have employees, to investors, to the bank. It's a way of formalizing our ideas so that actions can be taken against those ideas. Now, it doesn't make any difference if you're a for-profit, which many of you indicated you were, whether you had a Pilates studio or visual media, or you were a coach, or if you're a nonprofit. It doesn't make any difference if you're a new business or you're an existing business that wants to grow your business. It takes a plan. It takes a plan so that you have a guide, a compass, a way of viewing where you're going and how you're going to get there. Now, when we think about a business plan, what we want to think about is the fact that it answers two questions. One, it answers, where do you want to go? And two, how do you want to get there? Those strategies and tactics. I've often believed that business is really fairly straightforward, and that is point A, where are you today? Point B, where do you want to be tomorrow? And what is in the way of getting from point A to point B? Now, many people think about planning, their eyes roll back in their head because they think of a voluminous plan, 30, 40, 50 pages. But a plan only needs to be as long as it takes to convey the message that you're trying to communicate. It's a living document. It's a document that allows you to update it, to modify it, to change it. There's nothing cast in concrete that prevents you from changing the program. Now, when we think about planning, there's a number of different types of plans that we can think about for a small business. One is a full business plan. And that has all the elements of what one considers to be a business plan. And there are a number of templates available. The SBA on the SBA website has a great template for a full business plan. And more often than not, we need a full business plan when we need financing, because we need to tell the whole story. Another template is found on seedcorp.com. Why is this one that I recommend? Because it just doesn't have the titles of the sections. It actually asks you specific questions so that you can write the narrative around those questions. So I encourage you to take a look at seedcorp.com's template, if in fact a full business plan is what it is that you will need in order to affect your planning. But what we're going to talk about today is the business model canvas. So what is the business model canvas? Well, it's a tool. It's a tool in that it's a one-page business plan. And we're going to talk about the 9 blocks of the business model canvas. But a canvas itself defines the model. And the model is how you will make money, how you will operate your business, how you will engage your customers. And it, like a traditional plan, is dynamic. And the beauty of it is, if you find an assumption that you have made, you can just line it out and keep going. Now, for those of you in business already, it's a great way to redefine what you're doing and how you're doing it. Because what it does is it provides a great framework for the full detailed business plan, if in fact you need one. Now, the business model canvas was created in Europe by Alexander Osterwalder. And he has a website, strategizer.com. And I encourage you, after we're done, to spend some time and explore that website and get more detailed information about the whole concept of business model canvas. Well, as I said, there are 9 blocks. And the 9 blocks allow you to look at each of the elements of your business. Now, I'm going to talk actually about 10 blocks, because the one that's missing is competition. But when we think about the business model canvas, we want to think about, what do you do? And that's your value proposition. And we'll talk about each one of these blocks in detail. And who do you do it for? Your customer segments. And how do you reach them? Your channels of communications. What kind of relationships do you have? Well, how do you interact with your customers? Is it one-off? Is it once a day, once a month, quarterly? And then how do you do it? What are all the activities of your business? And who do you need to help you? Blocks 7 and 8. You look at how much will you make in your revenue streams, and where does the revenue come from, and how much will it cost you, so you can determine the end product of your enterprise, and that is profitability. When we look at the business model canvas, we start in the middle. And we start with the value proposition. And the value proposition is, what do we deliver to our customers? We want to ask ourselves, what are the problems we're solving? And what is it that we need to do in order to satisfy those people that we are serving? Well, what we need to do is look at the needs, wants, and desires of our customers. We need to ask ourselves, what are we offering? Now, my wife and I owned a trade show marketing company for almost 30 years. we specialized in training and measurement. Well, we offered training, we offered measurement as two of our product offerings, but our value proposition was performance improvement. What we sold was teaching staff how to improve their performance so they could generate a higher return on their investment at trade shows and events. So you need to ask yourself, what's so compelling about what you offer that meets their needs, wants, and desires? And you need to ask yourselves, what are the needs that they have and the problems that they need to have solved so that you have a way to communicate with them differently than we provide training and measurement. So it's not what you do in your value proposition, it's the problems that you're solving and the satisfaction you're providing when you deliver your solution. Now, if you think about yourself on the right, on the left, you're the provider. You think about your customers on the right, they have pains. In our case, the exhibitors were not generating enough contacts with attendees at shows in order to generate the conversations in order to get qualified leads. And we provided pain relievers through training and measurement, which gave them an indication of what did they need to do in order to improve their performance. And those became gains for the customer. So what we have to think about as we think about the very first element of the business model canvas is, what are you doing that provides a solution to a needs, wants, and desire? Now, I'm sure all of you know Waze, W-A-Z-E. I need to get to the Council of Aging in Sandwich to deliver food to their seniors. I go to Waze. Now, what's the value proposition that they are offering me? It's not the GPS. It allows me to beat traffic. Last week, I was on my way to Sandwich to deliver, and it told me to get off of Route 6 and take 6A to Quaker Meeting House Road rather than 6 because there was an accident. It allowed me to beat that traffic. It allows me to navigate anywhere. One time I had a client in the middle of New Jersey, and anything north of Philadelphia, for the most part, we drove from here. It was easier than going to the airport and flying and renting a car, et cetera, et cetera. We used our Waze, and I pulled into the parking lot at the client's offices, and I looked at my partner and said, I have no idea where we are, because all I did was left, right, left, right. But it allows me to navigate anywhere. Provides warnings. Car on the right, hazard in the road. And it provides satisfaction. I got from point A to point B without getting lost. It also allows me to find every Dunkin' Donut and every McDonald's between here and wherever I'm going. It gives me information about the towns I'm going through. And it also offers information relative to drivers for advertisers like Dunkin' Donuts and McDonald's. So you can see this is not what Waze does as a GPS, it's the solutions that they're providing. The second element we want to look at is customer segments. So we ask ourselves, for whom are we creating value? And it may not just be one. For example, in our case, we had several levels of customers in a number of different customer segments. Our number one customer was an exhibit manager or an event manager. That's who we're working for. They're the ones that had the problems. They're the ones that needed a solution. But we also had a customer segment was the owner, the president of a company, or the budget holder. As a second level. A third level was owners of shows or organizers of shows, because we provided services to them for their customers, the exhibitors. So we need to look at who are our customers and how do we define them? I had a client once in Florida that had an online grunge clothing business for young adults. They had two very specific customer segments, young adults and their parents. And they had to look at the value proposition as it relates to each one of those segments. Now, you need to understand and define your customer segments as clearly as you can so that you can then align your value propositions with them. So understanding what they think, what they see, how they feel, what they do, makes you able to align those two elements. And also asking yourself, why do they buy? When do they buy? Understanding their behavior. Now, along with that comes demographics. When I say young adults for grunge clothing, is that 14 to 19? Is that 16 to 21? You need to define that because you will approach them very differently. Where are they located? Are they regional? Are they national? Are they international? So understanding your segment is very, very important. When my grandson, who has a dog walking business, looks at his customer segments, the number one customer segment is working adults. Number two is seniors who lack mobility. So you want to think in terms of each one of your customer segments, define them as closely as you can so that you can align their needs, wants, and desires with your value proposition. Now, when you go back to Waze, they have geographic segments. They have drivers. They have drivers who become part of the community. And they have roadside businesses, all individual segments that have needs, wants, and desires that need to be fulfilled through the value proposition. The third element is the channels, communication channels. This is tough because today we live in an over-communicated world. And getting people's attention is the challenge. So when we think about our customer segments, we need to ask ourselves, where do they get their information? How are you going to reach them? We have a coach, an ADHD coach, listening in. Looking at their customer segments, it might be the individuals, it might be the parents, it might be the caregivers. Understanding where they get their information so you can be there is critical, because you can't just use a shotgun approach, hang your shingle out, put an ad on Facebook or in a local magazine or a newspaper. You've got to understand, where do they get their information so you can be there. And how do you find out? You ask them. Now, one of the things we want to think about is targeting our customers. Many times we ask people, well, who are your customers? Well, everybody's a customer of mine. Well, they can't be. So you need to think in terms of who are your focus, who has the need, want, or desire for your specific product, and focus on them. And then ask yourself, how are you going to deliver what you offer. So when we think about that, we want to think about what we're delivering, to whom we're delivering it to, and how are we going to communicate with them so that we can let them know that we have a product or service available. Now, what I'd like to do at the moment is stop, because this is where we want to validate. And this is the beauty of this approach to business planning. If we look at our value proposition, if we look at our customer segments, if we look at how we think we can communicate with them, now's the time to stop and go out and talk to your customer segments and test your value proposition. Test where they get their information, so you can be sure when you take the next step, you're on the right track. And if you aren't, you go back to the assumptions you make and reevaluate them, because now's the time to do it before you take the next step. Now, when we look at ways, awareness, word of mouth, is their number one channel of communications. I had no idea Waze even existed. One day I was on my way to a client meeting with one of my associates. I pulled over and pulled out a map. My associate said, "Are you crazy? Get your phone out." And she got the app for Waze. I would never have known about it had she not told me. So we want to think in terms of how your word is spread. And awareness, word of mouth, is certainly still one of the most potent of all. We also have apps that are available you can download. So think in terms of channels of communication as that third leg of the stool that allows you to go out and validate your idea. So we take these three blocks and we go out and validate it. Now, when I say to people, the best way to validate is talk to people, is go find people in this customer segment, ask them about the value proposition. Does it resonate with them? And would they be willing to pay for a service that will meet their need, give them the gain for their pain? If it doesn't, you go back and retool. This morning at 8 o'clock, I had a mentoring session with a young man who's decided he wanted to create an app. And what we asked him at this session to report on his validation. And before we were done, because of the information that he generated by talking to customer segments, he has changed from an app to another form of social media, which is a forum, which will allow him to do exactly what he wanted to do, but in different format. That will be much less expensive and a higher potential for success. Why? Because he validated. He went out and talked to customers. Well, our customers have a different relationship with each one of us, and it depends upon your business. It depends upon whether your business is a daily or a bi-daily or a 3 times a week business. If you have a consulting business or a coaching business, it might be a once a month, and you sign them up for 6 months. If you have a dog walking business, it might be every other day, Monday through Friday, and you sign them up for 6 months. If it's Pilates, it might be every Wednesday, Tuesday, and Thursday from 9:30 to 11. And you sell subscriptions. You need to decide what kind of relationship you want with your customers. How will you gain them? How will you attract customers to you, retain them, and then grow your customer base? Now, many people think that acquiring your customers is you hang a shingle out. But you need to have a strategy that allows you to introduce yourself to them so they understand who you are, what you do, and what your offer is. Now, if you go back to Marketing 101, the big issue that most organizations face is awareness. There's a concept called the buying continuum. The buying continuum starts with the fact that every single person starts from a position of unawareness. They don't know the product or service exists. Your role is to get them from unawareness to awareness so they are aware of who you are. Rule of thumb, 5 to 7 contacts it takes before somebody starts to begin to be aware of who you are. You then take them from awareness to understanding so they understand what you offer and what your differentiators are. From understanding, it's believability, that what you're communicating to them is believable. After they believe it, then they might try it. And when they try it and they like it, they may try it again and tell other people about it. So your relationship with that customer starts with acquisition. And then asking yourself, how do you retain them? How do you keep them as a customer? It might be because you sign a contract and it's a year contract with an automatic renewal. And then how do you grow your customer base? How do you grow your customers? What can you offer them tomorrow that you didn't offer them yesterday? This is all involved in the relationship and how you intend to reach and serve them. So what created value for them? What did they see in your value proposition that said you can solve their needs, wants, or desires? And what will keep them coming back and not continually searching for the next best supplier? So this element is critical, especially if you're trying to grow your business. Now, if you look at Waze, the casual users, the free app, people may use it today, may not use it tomorrow. Sometimes I just use it to know what time I'm going to get there, not for directions. They also have community relationships because they provide information for the community. So if somebody's driving on I-95 and they're going through a community that has historic importance, people are notified of that. So they continually ask in their advertisers what they expect as part of their customer relationship. Now, we need to look at the internal elements of a business and ask ourselves, what are the activities that it takes in order to supply or provide your value proposition? So you want to step back and ask yourself, what's everything I need to do in order to operate my business? Because operating a coaching business is very different than operating a dog boarding business or having an indoor play space for children. Very different. There's accounting, there's marketing, there's maintenance. So who's going to do all these activities? Are you going to do them all, or are you going to search out others that can help you? But before you decide who's going to do what, you have to list all the activities it takes in order to run and operate your business. So when we think about it, some of them are strategic activities and some are just unique activities that your value proposition requires. So what you want to do is think in terms of what are the activities that give you competitive advantage. Now, competitive advantage is a marketing term. And it's what is it that you provide that allows you to stand apart from your competition so they cannot compete head to head. So what do you need to be doing to do that? In our business, what gave us competitive advantage more than anything else is we were a knowledge base. We were a source of knowledge for our customers. So we provided them information and knowledge through blogs before they were blogs. I don't think it was called blogs when we started. In order to do that, we had to decide who was going to do it. Well, we divided it. My partner, my wife, she came up with the ideas and I did the writing. So what you want to do is think in terms of what are all the key activities and who's going to do it best. I did all the data entry into QuickBooks, but I had a bookkeeper come in at the end of every month to make sure that everything tied together, so I didn't pay the CPA at the end of the year a fortune to tie everything together. I knew intellectually what I wanted in the way of collateral material, but I am very linear. So I had a graphic designer who supported us. So in order to do that, we had to list all the activities. And what are the most important things it takes in order to run your business that you have to do every single day? There are two things that a business owner needs to do individually: cash management and sales. Cash management, very straightforward. What's my bank balance this morning? Every single morning, I check the bank balance. I looked at our invoices that are owed and invoices that are due to determine the health of our business. And every single proposal, whether I did it, one of our associates did it, came through me or my partner to assure that it included all the elements it took. So we divided the responsibilities, but we couldn't have done that without looking at what are all the activities that it takes in order to run a business. So if you're in manufacturing, which I didn't see any manufacturing in the list of businesses on today, but certainly marketing and sales, two very different: marketing, demand, sales, closing orders, distribution, getting your products and services to the end user, delivery, follow-up, all the activities it takes to promote your value, you need to list and identify who's going to be responsible. Well, we go back to ways. Well, new markets, R&D software, they had to continually update their software, selling to advertisers and creating data. So when you went through Tupelo, Mississippi, you found out by entering the city limits that that was the birthplace of Elvis Presley. They curated data about the communities. Now we can't do it all alone. Those of you who are in business know that. Those of you who are starting business will learn that very quickly. So we ask ourselves, who are our partners? Who are the people that we are going to work with closely? Well, the first one is our bank. Whether you look at Robert Nichols or Seth Felix, they're your source of financial assistance. They're just not a source of funds. They can help you think through the financial side of your business. Your suppliers, they not only can help you with credit, but they can help you find what you're looking for in the way of quality materials. So you think about your partners, and your partners come in a variety of different shapes and sizes. Some of them are strategic alliances. We had strategic alliances with exhibit builders. When they sold a new exhibit for over $250,000, we created alliances with exhibit builders so they offered training services as part of the package. And then we provided them feedback on what they could be doing differently or better for their clients. Or it might be joint ventures, where we had three individual companies where they made proposals. We were part of their proposal. for measurement. And as we said, buyers and suppliers, and sometimes our competitors can become key partners. Today, we have a variety of different ways of going to market, and sometimes our competitors are part and parcel. So you want to think in terms of how can you optimize your operation, make it more efficient through partners. When you look at ways, certainly there are big advertisers, there are gas chains where they're partners, and community leaders, because they're the ones that provided information about the communities. Now, when we think about partners, we want to think about how we structure these relationships and what are the activities that partners will perform for each other. We want to look at those activities and determine who's going to do what and how's it going to work. And how do you keep the partnership alive and well through time? So cultivating those relationships is an important part of planning your business and understanding who's going to be a part of your business model. Now, aside from partners, you got resources. And these are people like an accountant, a lawyer. These are people that are going to provide you with insight and services that will help you get from point A to point B. So you want to ask yourself, what are the strategic and unique assets that your business has to have in order to compete successfully? Well, obviously you need finance. You need money, whether you take it out of your savings, whether you borrow it from your family, whether you get a loan from a bank, whether you just get a line of credit. You need to have resources in the way of finance. You need to have physical plant or logistics. You need to know whether you need an office or not. You need to know whether you need a storefront or not. Or if you have a dog boarding business like this one of the individuals on the call today, what do you need in the way of facility? I thought we needed an office when we started our business. So I went and rented an office, and it turns out nobody visited me, and all of our business was someplace else. So after the first year, we closed that office and we renovated the space above our garage, and that became our office for the first 15 years. You also need to understand what's your intellectual property. What is it that requires protection? We created training programs. And we would always identify in our proposals, in our contracts, that this was in our intellectual property. But the question was, would we pay a lawyer in order to protect it if necessary? So as a small business startup, what we did was I had a friend who was a lawyer. He created a cease and desist letter for me because I wasn't going to sue clients, but I wanted to make sure they knew that this was our property. So you need to understand what it is you need to do and what kind of resources you need.
Mark,
Yes.
a question has come in from someone.
Yep.
How does someone at the poverty line get started? I'm trying to survive on SSDI and it doesn't even cover living expenses, let alone business costs.
Well, I've always thought of crawl, walk, run as a mantra. You know, start small, start with as little as you possibly need. Probably need to know a little bit more about the business, whether you have to invest in inventory, whether you are providing a service. But certainly, if you need investor funding, you might find investors who are interested. I have a client right now that has a great business idea, but has no capital in himself. and he's out looking for a investor so that he can get qualify for a working capital loan.
The follow-up was, I'd like to offer a service with my assistance animal.
Well-
Take her to jails or prisons to demonstrate how dog training works.
Is the customer a prison? Is that what you said?
I assume that's the case, yes.
Okay, then what I would do is I would work through the agencies, local, state, and national, and determine whether there are any requirements that you could qualify for. And for example, the sheriff's department here on Cape Cod, I would go, if you were here on Cape Cod, I would go to the sheriff's department and see if they have any requirements that you could qualify for and sell them the service.
And you might be able to get grants, which would help you along.
Right. Yeah. There might be, and I can't tell you what grants, but you might want to start with the individual agencies that service the prison systems in your area. Does that help?
Yes, I think that's good.
Okay.
There is another question in chat. What was the letter your lawyer provided for you? You
A
mentioned
cease and desist letter. It was a letter that didn't threaten to sue them, but notified them that they have violated the agreement that we have, that the materials that we supplied to them in the way of training was the intellectual property of Marketech 360, and they are to cease and desist utilizing our property, our intellectual property. Does that help?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, let's see. Okay, so when we look at resources, think of your business having human needs, right? Financial needs, physical needs, and intellectual needs. And look at what resources you need, and then determine where to find them. For example, if you're looking at human, what kind of knowledge base do you need in the way of human resources for your business? What kind of skills are needed? What kind of abilities do people need to bring to your business or talent? So when you think in terms of the resources that you can look at these 4 categories. Then look at financial and physical and intellectual. For example, you may very well want to patent what you have to protect what you've created in the way of a product. Or you may want to go after a trademark so that it's broader in its protection. But what you want to think in terms of is what are the resources you need in order to make this model work? And they fall into these categories. Now, when you go back to Waze, they certainly have software resource requirements, algorithms in order to make the system work, developers, maps, IT infrastructure, and mindshare. So when we think about your resources, think in terms of what do you need in order to make your model work. Now, we get down to the tough parts, and that is, what are all the costs that it take in order to start this business? And we can look at the service dog that was mentioned a few minutes ago. You don't necessarily need a place of business. You probably would like to have a website of some sort, or at least a landing page. You need to be able to increase awareness of your service, but you don't necessarily have to have a cost associated with using social media if you can do it yourself. So you need to look at all your costs for turning the lights on and starting the business, if you will. You need to understand what are the fixed costs. In other words, if you have a place of business, a storefront, You've got a fixed cost and rent. What are the variable costs? Those costs that are associated with the varying volume of business. So what you want to do is you want to look at your cost structures. And if you take a look at SCORE's website, you'll find a number of different templates that are available to you to do budgeting, cash flow, and statements. So once you've looked at your fixed and variable costs, then you want to look at what happens if you grow the business, and what are your economies of scale, and what are your most important costs. What's the most expensive thing you have, and what's the least? So what you want to do is think in terms of looking at your expenses against your revenues so that you can always have positive cash flow. I used to have a sign over my desk that said happiness is positive cash flow. That means you got more money coming in and you have more money going out. So you need to then, once you've determined what your costs are, you need to then look at what your revenues are. So we know that Waze has software costs, infrastructure costs with IT, maps, and sales. So those are fairly straightforward. Now, what are your revenue streams? You have a number of revenue streams. If you go back to the service dog, you have revenue streams that could be associated with the prison system, but you also have a revenue stream that could be with individuals who need to understand how to utilize service dogs. Could be veterans that need additional. So you need to look at what are all your revenue streams where you are going to generate value from customers. So ask yourself, how does your business generate revenue? Well, in our business, we had training, which was live training, where we'd go to the customer's location or go to the trade show and perform training for the customer. We had online training where we would do workshops and webinars online. We also had program training where we posted it onto a website so they could take advantage of the training 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we had 3 forms of training revenue. We also had a number of different ways that we could generate revenue in our measurement business. Quantitative, which we did exit interviewing and surveying. We had qualitative, which was observational measurement. And we did auditing, where we actually physically viewed an exhibitor's exhibit and their staff and gave them a report. So we had 6 different ways of generating revenue. So when we look at our revenue, then we have to look at what's the cost associated with that revenue. So you take both the left-hand side and the right-hand side. So when we think of this, again, we have to look at positive cash flow. So are your value propositions in an alignment with your customers' needs, wants, and desires, and their willingness to pay? They may think that your value proposition is fantastic, but they're not going to pay for it. So what the business model canvas does is help you put all the elements of your business model in alignment. Well, you can see that the revenue streams are roadside businesses, paper impression, and real-time marketing for Waze. Now, I told you that there were 9 blocks, but I want to add one more, and that's the 10th block is competition. You need to understand who your competitors are. You need to know where they are, where they're located, what they offer, what's the depth and breadth of their business, what's their competitive advantage, how are they positioned in the market, do they function in a niche? And I'll give you a great example. We have a coffee shop that is about a mile from us. They started only wanting to be a coffee roaster. And somebody says, you can't just be a coffee roaster, you have to serve coffee. So they started serving coffee. And then people kept saying, well, where's the food? I need some pastry. So now they offer pastry. Now, this is a go-to spot with tables and chairs and couches and easy chairs where people come to meet and talk and engage. Okay. Somebody came to us and said, I want to open a coffee shop. Well, where? Well, at Bass River. I said to them, well, do you know how many coffee shops are within a mile of that location? Well, no. Well, the first step is you need to look at where the competition, what they're offering, and how you will fit into the scheme of things. So understanding who your competition is very, very important. Understanding what they offer, how they price it, what benefits are they offering? What's their key differentiator? And look at all the elements that it takes for them to be successful. Balance that against what your plan is. So you can determine how well you fit into the competitive landscape. We had an ice cream shop that opened about a mile from us 2 summers ago. Their competitive advantage was going to be acai bowls. Turns out there are 4 different ice cream shops within a mile of them that offer the same product. They had to make a quick pivot. So understanding this in the planning phase helps as you launch, as you grow. So if you take a look at this from a 30,000 foot level, I want you to think about your business on the left and your customer on the right. From your business, you look at the partners, the activities, and the resources. From your customer, you look at who they are, what the relationships are, and what are the channels. And in the center, you look at the value, customer value, and the business value. Business value is your cost structure and your revenue streams. That's the money side. And the customer value is your offer. What need, want, or desire are you fulfilling to satisfy your customers' pains? I'm going to take you back a couple of generations and remind you what Winston Churchill said. They who fail to plan, plan to fail. If you don't take the time up front to plan your new business, your current business expansion, you have a chance of falling into that trap of the failed businesses. 25% of all the businesses that start fail within the first 2 years. And most of them because they didn't plan their launch. They didn't plan how they were going to grow their business. They didn't plan to crawl first, then walk, and then run. They started running, and then tripped. For those of you who need to do a full business plan, in the appendix of my handout is a detailed plan and format that you can follow. I encourage you to go to strategizer.com, take a look at the business model canvas that is online, learn from what they've done because they've expanded it beyond this into lean planning for those of you who are in the tech side. But take the time. It's worth it. Any other questions?
Yeah, a couple, Mark.
Okay.
What if there is so much competition? How do you specify?
How do you specify who the competition is?
I am assuming there, that is the question. Or what do you do if there is so much competition?
Well, think in terms of why people buy. They buy to fulfill a need, want, or desire. So understanding what your customer base is, that's why understanding and defining your target audience is so important. Then define what you think the competitors who you've been able to identify, what their competitive advantage is. That is what positions them in the mind of their customers so they see no suitable substitute. And then you define yours so that people can see why they should do business with you. Does that help?
Yes. What do you recommend in reference to developing a business plan to serve as a prime government contracting business?
Okay. I don't see the plan other than what it is you're doing, and that is contracting with the government, being much different, because they will have specific buying criteria, and designing your business model around the criteria that's defined in the specific area that you are working in still requires a plan. So whether it's government contracting or boarding dogs or selling a service, you still need to think in terms of what are you offering? To whom are you offering it? How are you going to communicate? What differentiates you? Because it's not all low bid. I don't know if that helps or not.
I think it does.
Hey Seth, would you like to say a few words about how the bank feels about business plans and what they're looking for?
Yeah, sure. The type of business plans that we see predominantly are from businesses who have been established for at least a year, one way or the other, and are looking to grow it. Like they've had an idea, they've started small, and they're trying to figure out how to scale it or how to diversify it or how to expand it. To be honest, startup businesses have quite a few hurdles to overcome, and the way you overcome those is by being organized and smart. And in terms of starting a business, there was a question earlier that I wanted to chime in on, but sort of held my tongue, which is that if you want to start a business, go open a business. I had a business when I was a young banker called Felix Solutions LLC, and I had a general concept of what I wanted that to be, and I did a little bit of background work, and I ended up being a banker full time and not following through on it. But it was to teach people about credit when they were in high school, so that they didn't get captured by those credit card offers in college when they entered the campus. And everyone agreed it was an awesome idea. And this gets to some of Mark's earlier points. Everyone wants to have that knowledge and experience and not make those mistakes. Nobody wants to pay for it. The problem was that all those parents said, well, I'll teach my kid about not messing up with that first credit card. They thought that they had the knowledge, and whether they did or not didn't matter. No one was going to pay for it. So, I only understood that by going through, at the University of Washington Business School, this plan in deep detail, got to the point where I said, this is not a moneymaker. I'd love to help people, but I got to eat too. So what I would say is follow Mark's guidelines, because what the bank wants to know is that you've thought about it and done a little bit of it. And getting financing on day one is tricky. Friends and family is going to be your primary source of the financial input. SCORE, amazing people. The RE in SCORE is retired executives. They've done this. They know how to build businesses and grow them and sustain them. And they're going to give you a lot of advice on putting this business plan together. At the end of the day, you got to figure out a way to get a little bit of experience in it. And your business plan that talks about what you're going to do based on what you've done on a small scale and with folks like Mark at SCORE is going to determine our excitement and appetite for the financing piece, which is generally what people are looking for. But you know what? It cost me $150 to form an LLC and to open it up. And I started to do a couple little things. And guess what? It's cool to get a check to Felix Solutions LLC. It wasn't what ended up being the final thing, but it got me really excited about, all right, how can I make this thing work? Because a lot of it is just mindset, right?
Okay, we do have some other questions. Could you explain how to develop the financial projections, what to include in a business plan? For example, a bakery where all the products such as pastries and bread are purchased in store?
Sure. First of all, I would recommend that you download some templates. Don't start from scratch. And most templates give you enough clues that you'll know that, for example, the bakery has electricity it needs, has heating needs, has point of sale needs, etc. You need to then take the other side of it and look at each of the revenue streams. For example, say you do donuts, bread, and cakes. And you start off in month 1 and you say, I'm going to sell 40 dozen donuts, 25 cakes, and 30 loaves of bread. And use a standard value for each one of those, and then project it out every month. How many more loaves of bread? How many more donuts? How many more cakes are you going to sell? And that becomes your projection. What I would do is do it in an Excel spreadsheet so you can modify it, and do it in 3 levels. Do it in high, low, probable. So if things are really good and people are lined up out the door, like some of the early donut shops, you got a high projection. If it's low, and that is people are have trouble finding you because you're on a side street, that's low. But if people are passing by, you're in a busy shopping center, make it probable. And do your projections based on your best estimates. But projections are just that. They are estimates. You make some assumptions. And the one thing you want to think about is nothing is cast in concrete. You need to keep modifying it. A local restaurateur and I worked with a couple who were opening a restaurant, and we took the template and designed it so they could change the number of seats per night and the average seats per night so that they could change it by month, because as you know, where I live on the Cape, you've got the season from July to now Veterans Day, or June to Veterans Day, and then you got the shoulder season. So, but that's what I would do. Does that help?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I have one more question, and because we are over time, I'm going to go ahead and read it out and give Mark and Seth the opportunity to give a very short answer. And then we'll have to encourage anyone with any additional questions to please go ahead and reach out to a SCORE mentor. That's really how you can get in depth with the things that you're asking. I'm looking to scale my product line this year. I'm going to need to invest in manufacturing. Would you get a loan, or would you look for investors? And how do you find a lender that supports upcycling products where costs are higher and restrictions are greater?
Go ahead, guys.
So it's a dynamic formula, because there are pros and cons of each option. You just got to pencil it out. When you get an investor, you don't have all of the restrictions that a bank is going to put on you in terms of profitability, in terms of how you're spending the money, in terms of leverage. But with an investor, you may give up some ownership in the business in order to grow it, in order to get that cash infusion. If banks are gonna look at an opportunity like that, again, we need the projections. We need to know what you're going to do different. It's a business plan to grow. But if you have a year or 2 under your belt from which to base these projections on, we put a lot more stock in it. You're probably going to need an SBA guarantee depending upon how much collateral you have and how much of it is just working capital. And the SBA likes 24 months of financial projections. So make sure that spreadsheet has a couple extra columns.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you to Mark and Jim from the SCORE chapter in Cape Cod, and Seth and Robert from East Cambridge Savings Bank. Again, reach out to a SCORE mentor to get your questions answered if we did not get to you today, and watch for the follow-up of the recording and information on how to reach out to SCORE and to East Cambridge Savings Bank. Okay, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.